Welcome to the Wandering Tangent Podcast. I'm BJ, with me is Jeff and Gary, and this time around our review is going to be based off of the 2016 action-adventure movie Star Trek Beyond. Now, if you didn't listen to our review first, just to give a little short rundown, I gave it a -1, Jeff gave it a -3, and Gary gave it a 0.5. So that's kind of where we're standing.
Yes.
So, I was very surprised by that particular reaction. I partially thought that Jeff would give it a reasonably good rating, especially based off of how you were presenting this initially. But, hey, I'll let you...
Well, how Jeff presented it initially was, let's talk about this one. I don't think He Who Shall Not Be Named had much to do with it.
Yeah.
He Who Shall Not Be Named had a producer credit. He was the producer, which I think he's kind of a producer on most stuff, really.
Producer on all. Yeah. So...
But to put a little background into this, apparently in production, this show was kind of a flop and had some problems, and the producers had concerns, so they had Simon Pegg do some writing and extra stuff in production to try and change it and make it more entertaining.
Well, he is a credited writer. Simon Pegg and Doug Jung and... supposedly Gene Roddenberry, so I assume this is loosely based on a Roddenberry script.
Huh.
At least according to IMDb.
But for Simon Pegg even though he's accredited as a writer, I think when a writer comes into a disastrous project, it's not really like a full test of their skills.
Okay, and sorry, I'm just trying to fact check this real quick, because no offense, Jeff, but sometimes you say stuff with all kinds of confidence that aren't true.
That's not true.
And I was going to say, some movies have actually almost all the movies have writers on set to fix things at the last minute. And sometimes those writers are even actors in the movie. I don't know if you're familiar with the movie Predator. But practically the chief writer have you ever seen that movie, Jeff?
Oh yeah.
So there's a guy in that movie. He's kind of a nerdy guy, glasses, wears a vest all the time.
Oh yeah.
Did you just ask Jeff if he's seen Predator?
Yes.
This is the guy who, in his front yard, we played Predator with G.I. Joes before I had watched Predator, so...
Okay.
As a 10-year-old kid, I was into Predator.
I remember thinking it was terribly unfair because, I did not know the context. It was like, oh yeah, I'm invisible.
So, but the guy who's wears glasses, he was one of the writers, because that one was also as you say, it's kind of not exactly the best put together movie initially, and they had to do a lot of rewrites and reconcepts. Obviously, Predator has gone down as, one of the better movies. At least it's become really a classic, well in the end. Right? Yeah. It's worked out very well. Whereas, I can't, what I'm saying is, just because someone comes in to try to fix something doesn't mean that the end product is going to immediately be bad.
I know. It's a matter of how bad the product is, and it's a complicated thing. I agree.
Okay. So on the fly.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry. So to complete the on the fly fact check, so does not appear to be a on the set kind of thing. The original writer, I guess, was also supposed to be the director, but he left the project. So Simon Pegg and Doug Jung were hired to rewrite the screenplay, and I'm just going to say this quote to get the reaction from Jeff. To quote Wikipedia, with Pegg saying about the previous draft that Paramount, quote, had a script for Star Trek that wasn't really working for them. I think the studio was worried that the previous draft might have been a bit too Star Trekky. End quote.
I know. The thing that was awful about it is that it was too devoted to what Star Trek really was about. We don't know their first draft, so it's hard for us to judge. We'll have to take them for their word.
Yeah, so like I said, I tried to kind of judge this as standalone thing, and like even with that, and I think I said as much in my review, like even taking out it being not tricky or too tricky or like whatever, maybe it was just the mood I was in last night. I pretty much waited until the last possible minute to watch this. Like I was doing something else. I'm like, okay, I have to watch this movie. It's about 2 hours long. It's going to be past my bedtime by the time I'm done watching this movie. So let's just get it over with. So, but yeah, I thought the villain was super paper thin, and I'm going to ask you guys, because maybe I just wasn't paying attention at that particular moment. Did like the dude, what was the minion's name? Manus or something like that? Did he die on screen? Did I just miss that?
I don't think the minion, we're talking about the dude that ends up fighting the white chick, right?
Yeah. Manus.
I think they just teleported away and got on the ship and said who gives the care. He just gets left on the planet. So
he just kind of becomes a non-factor. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was
honestly,
like, maybe I stopped paying attention and just like missed that part. I'm like, wait a second, what happened in the Minion?
Yeah, this movie is hard to follow in the sense that it's all designed to keep your attention span by being fast, but honestly, it's so blah that it just, my brain wants to shut off while I'm watching it and not pay attention to what's happening desperately. You guys may not have that, but the director apparently was from Fast and Furious movies. He had done a bunch of those, which to me is another reason why that's just like a bad match for a Star Trek film. You want an action movie, then you would get a director like that. So
I understand this, where you're coming from, Jeff, and there's a reason why I couldn't give it anything more than a 0.5. But I promised I was going to discuss a little bit more in depth as to why I gave it a 0.5 as opposed to a lower score. And I was even tempted to give it a higher score for a minute there. But then, I've stuck fairly solid to this. So if you guys are ready for that, I can go into it.
Yeah, go ahead.
So BJ, and it's interesting that you say that you were in kind of a mood when watching this. I think mood and then also the people that you're with can sometimes affect the way you see a movie. Because when I watched this movie, I watched it last night and I was watching it with my son, right? Mm-hmm. And he's seen some Star Trek movies before, but I don't think he's ever seen any of the shows. And when he'd seen the movies before, they were only vague recollections, right? So basically, it's almost as if he's seeing this movie for the first time. And this might even be one of his first, like, real solid memories, one of his core memories of Star Trek. So he's probably going to be establishing Star Trek based off of this. Yes, Jeff, I understand. That's some sort of weird blasphemy to you.
You're right. Yep. That violates all of the Star Trek rules and regulations. It does.
That this movie is the yardstick by which he is now going to compare Star Trek, right? But then again,
it's like all the Star Wars kids who learn about Star Wars from cartoons.
Yeah. So he has learned about this basically from this, and he was really excited Because, as you said, it was a movie designed to keep your attention. And he's an 8-year-old boy. And, if a movie's not keeping his attention, he says it's boring and he walks away. He never did that the entire movie. It entertained him the entire time. That's why I was tempted. Yeah. No, you go ahead.
Well, no, I was just about to agree with you. And I think that is totally true. This movie is perfect for 10-year-olds. It's designed for that. It almost should be an animated movie or whatever. But anyway, the action, the characters, the level of character development is fine for 8 to 10-year-olds or something like that. Because the bad guy is just bad.
Yes.
You learn later he has kind of a motivation, but his motivation isn't really described.
Yeah,
I didn't get the bad guy at all.
Yeah, the motivation was one of those things that had me rolling my eyes. It's like, he's a bad guy because he used to be a soldier, and soldiers only know violence or whatever. I'm like,
It should have been.
Well, so my son, he's watching it with me, and he's entertained by it, and I think part of that rubbed off on me, right? Where I actually went into this movie expecting, I full on went into this movie expecting to probably give it a score just like you guys were going to give it, right? But then he's entertained by it, and I can't help but have a good time watching it with him, right?
Yeah, well, there's
so that kind of taints, if anything, that kind of taints my viewing of it the other way. Whereas you guys had this tainted viewing of it of, you really appreciate Star Trek, and this doesn't look like a Star Trek movie, and I appreciate that. I don't ask, I don't think that you guys should change your scores or anything, because I think your scores are very valid for your viewing of it. But my viewing of it, I'm like, it was an okay movie.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say I think both me and Jeff were pretty upfront about the fact that fairly or unfairly, we did weigh this movie for being under the Star Trek banner.
And that's what I mean, that, you weighed it because of that. And that's okay, because in all honesty, it should be judged as a Star Trek movie because it's Star Trek, right?
Yeah,
it's not generic science fiction movie.
Yeah. And
yep.
Yeah, and sort of on the same subject, I was going to say that, to be fair to Gary, I know he has been on the other side of that. I think we have brought up Starship Troopers in passing a time or two, about how for a lot of people our age, the movie was their first exposure to Starship Troopers, and it was for me, but I just happened to read the book and I fell in love with the book, and because of that I grew to, well, I guess I should start with, I didn't love Starship Troopers the movie, which is, I guess, kind of weird for people our age, because it seems like people
it's like
our generation and younger,
yeah,
people love them some Starship Troopers the movie, except for people who like the book. And I know Gary's on that camp, and we're just gonna leave it at that because there's words.
Yes,
words. But the emotion is the same.
There are opinions. So yeah,
yes.
I know Gary knows where we are coming from on this.
Yes. But in this particular case, it was an okay movie that entertained me, and for that, I give it a 0.5.
Yeah.
I was tempted for a second to give it a 0 or something else like that, but then I had to really do some soul searching as you guys were giving your reviews, and I'm like, should I drop it? And then I was like, no, I remember it was entertaining, right?
He had to do some soul searching. He had to think about the fact that I would find a way to reach through the internet and get him if he rated something at 0 again, but that's beside the point.
Actually, I thought I was going to piss you off more with the 0.5, but I had to stick with it. 0, I can understand.
I've come to accept.
Yeah, isn't 0 burden valid?
Well, I mean, in my mind at least, the way I thought I had pitched it is that 0 is like a truly neutral opinion, and I don't I don't think people have a truly neutral opinion on many things. They tend to feel positively or negatively about most things, but that's neither here nor there, I guess. No, Maybe I'm just weird because I'm also the one that's like, no 0.5. Ah.
But in this particular case, I am almost truly neutral on this, except I did, like I said, reiterate again, I did find it vaguely entertaining, so therefore 0.5. And also my son found it. He probably if you asked him, he'd probably rate it at 3 out of 5. But that's a little boy who has never seen the better Star Treks. So,
and this movie felt like a Guardians of the Galaxy type movie to me, without as good of characters, just with lesser characters and bigger plot holes. But there's a scene where they play Beastie Boys songs.
Yeah.
A Beastie Boys song, and they're going through, and they use that through VMF radio to just destroy them.
Yeah,
and like that is so stupid. But at the same time,
yes,
I could get why people are like, yay! The music and the light and the explosions, it all fits together. Okay,
I guess my problem.
I get the 10-year-old side of us is like, hooray! I get that.
Well, I guess my problem is that, or my problem with this particular part is that they said it would disable their ability to communicate with each other, like the drone ships, and then it just blows them all up.
I know the frequency causes them to just kaboom.
No, against the Beastie Boys.
Yeah, so the 10-year-old me is just fine and entertained, but the part of me that is older than 10 is like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that was in the script.
Yeah, spectacle-wise, it was quite the spectacle, but logic-wise, I'm like, this is dumb, but not quite dumb. It's it's cool, but it's not cool enough to trip the rule of cool, to overcome the dumb, in my opinion, I guess.
And there's a reason why it only got 0.5 for me, because I remember that scene in particular is one of those just it's just so dumb. On the other hand, from a writing perspective, they did have to wrap up that entire drone fleet somehow. So it does put a neat bow on that particular element of the story. So
kind of on that subject, then I guess this question is more aimed at Jeff than Gary, but Gary, you are allowed to share your opinion on this. In my notes, or it's the fourth line notes I made, quote, I hate to say it, but is the Enterprise being destroyed really that dramatic anymore? Because doesn't the Enterprise get destroyed in every other movie now?
I don't remember the other two movies. Was the Enterprise destroyed in Into Darkness?
I don't think the Enterprise was destroyed in either one of these, but it gets destroyed in Generations. And does it get destroyed in Search for Spock?
It does. Yes, and honestly, when the Enterprise gets destroyed in Search for Spock, it's quite a good scene, in my opinion. It's really good. There's a lot of emotion, and there's purpose behind it. Kirk sacrifices the ship to save the crew. There's a because of this, then this happens. There are cause and effect. But in this one, it's just they showed up at a distress call and it was a trap.
Well,
therefore they got blown up.
Well, I get what they are trying to do. They were sort of trying to kind of evoke the same emotion from the opening of the first New Trek movie.
Where everything...
where Kirk's dad stays behind and stays behind on the ship to save the crew or whatever. And for a 10-minute cold open, that's a pretty emotional scene. But I guess now I think about that's kind of my problem with the new Trek movies in general, is that they try to evoke emotions from past movies, whether it be in their own series or the or like the original Star Trek movies. They keep trying to evoke character drama without the characters being that attached. Like they keep talking about, oh yeah, we've been together like 3 years. We're a really good team, right? Oh yeah, right. And
you gotta show the audience, not tell them. You can't just say,
prove to us you're a good team.
Prove it.
Not just be like, oh yeah, we're a good team.
So
exactly, yeah.
The term, I think the term I've heard reviewers talking about it is key jangling, where
member berry.
Member berries or key jangling, where you have this, where people see this thing and they'll key in on it, right? And it is a little bit of a lazy writing, just a little bit, right? Where it's like, oh, you're building off of something, you're standing on the shoulders of giants, and you're just doing a little, instead of standing there stalwartly and trying to build off of their success, you're just kind of doing a tap dance where at the heights that they have elevated you to, right?
Which is a lot of entertainment these days with so many reboots coming on.
Yeah,
it's kind of a big pandemic of a problem.
Yeah, that kind of ended up being my biggest problem with Into Darkness, because like walking out of the theater, because did we all go see that together? I know
yes.
Jeff and his wife was there.
I remember us all together.
I might have been there.
Okay, because I remember walking out of the movie like, oh yeah, that was all right, but then like the more I thought about it, I thought about in the theater afterwards, the theater was just completely full of Trek fans trying to explain Wrath of Khan to their not Trek friends so that their Trek friends would get what the movie was trying to do.
Yeah, where a better movie had already gone before.
Yes.
It just didn't sell it to a new generation. It needed to establish these characters emotionally for people. It doesn't achieve any of that. I've said this before, and I don't want to rehash to anything, but I'll be very brief. But there's a tendency when you have an old successful story, there's a tendency to make it mainstream. When you do that, you go like, whatever was unique and different about this that gave it an edge and made it successful, that must not be valuable because we need to now make it the same as everything else in order to sell it to the mainstream audience. So like, you wouldn't like take the Twilight Zone and turn it into a horror movie, because the Twilight Zone is more than just horror. It's about the mystery and it's about the suspense. I mean, and you wouldn't like turn it into like a slasher movie or anything like that. It just, there's more to it than just scary things that jump out at you.
What you're going for. Don't know if Twilight Zone was the best example, since that's
maybe not. But with Star Trek, Star Trek always had, the thing is people see that it had action. Yeah, it had action. It also had comedy. It also had all sorts of these different things that go into a movie, but there was always a cerebral, there was always some sort of life lesson that tied it all together, and that's kind of like the cherry on top. It's the thing that really makes it meaningful. So like all the comedy and action and suspense and horror and the villains that are really scary, and like Khan, who's just has so much more depth to him than this villain had. Like you have all of that, but then there's a cerebral theme to it. Like in The Wrath of Khan, it's all about Kirk being, he wants to be captain again. He doesn't, he's an admiral. His career's going well, but then he doesn't feel that something's right about it. But in this movie, he's the captain of the Enterprise, he's doing his work, but then he still feels like unhappy somehow. And they don't really ever explore that or go like, what?
Yeah. I was going to say, they kind of tease at the very beginning. Like they tease how, they tease how Kirk's not sure if he's chasing his dream or his father's dream. And like Spock is having like, having the to face the concept of his mortality because his was it alternate universe, the alternate universe version of him died. So like he, in air quotes, died. So like they plant these seeds and then they don't do anything with them.
Yeah. That's because they were really just stuff to trying to make a Fast and Furious movie is what they were trying to do.
Gary, I feel like me and Jeff just ran roughshod over you. Was there something you were going to say?
No, I mean, I kind of understand it, and it can be exemplified in something that you just mentioned. So I'm just going to, So it's kind of where, so I was explaining it to my son. I think his name is Zachary Quinto. Is that the guy's name?
Yeah.
The guy who plays Spock in this one?
Yeah.
So my son, when we were talking about this movie going into it, right, before we got home and we're getting ready to watch this movie, he asked me, because I told him it was a Star Trek movie. He's like, don't you have a Star Trek poster? And I said, yes, I do. And it's an old Star Trek poster, one with Leonard Nimoy as Spock, and it's got a whole lot of his old quotes, right? And I said, he's the good Spock. And then he obviously doesn't show up other than like a picture in this one, because I think he passed away right before this one was made, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I forget the exact time, maybe, yeah.
So he passes away, and he can't be in this movie, and it kind of exemplified that, what you guys were saying, because previously there had been Spock, played by Leonard Nimoy, who had done so much hard work to create a character who was emotionally repressed, but you could sense emotion underneath the surface, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, that did exist in the original Spock, but he kind of they push it to make it a lot more exaggerated this time. But yeah.
Versus in this one, there's multiple times where like you don't even get the idea of where this person's kind of cold and logical, because you see him doing emotional outbursts all the time. Like, he's happy or sad. He laughs. He's happy. He's sad. He cries. Blah, blah, blah. Which is stuff that you'd never have caught Leonard Nimoy doing. So basically, this guy is just kind of being there, doing a kind of a mediocre job. While at the same time, they have to show you the old Spock to say, hey, this guy, he's the new Spock, and he's just as good as the old Spock, because see, we've got the old Spock and we're putting them right next to each other, and they're doing the thumbs up together, and that means they're good. And then you're just like, well, I guess, but you're not really fooling a lot of people with that. But having said that, at some point the torch has to be passed if you're going to keep making. Like, you can either accept, Jeff, I'm going to posit this to you. You can either accept the fact that there will only ever be 6 Star Trek movies, well, or plus whatever they did with the Next Generation.
9.
I can't remember. 9. You can accept the fact that there will be
10. Yeah. Okay.
You can accept that fact, or you can accept the fact that at some point they're going to have to pass the torch, and in passing the torch,
someone will accidentally drop it.
Well, no, it's not accidentally drop it. They're going to, Jeff.
They're going to be like, oh, this thing is too much fire on it. Let's fix it somehow.
I'm going to say a name. I'm going to say a name that I said doesn't exist, and it doesn't exist for a very good reason.
You can say the name. I'm the one who can't say the name.
Having said that, so no. What I'm going to say, it's a different name, and it's not the name that you're thinking of. What I'm saying is Indiana Jones and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
Technically, that movie...
What are you talking about?
No.
I've never heard of that before.
Yes. Okay. Now,
Technically, it was made by the people who made the original ones, right?
Yes.
That's what you're getting at? So it wasn't really carrying on the torch. It was the same
people. Tell me there's a second movie. There's a second, what's it called? Second Pacific Rim movie.
So where I'm going with this is that at some point you're going to have to accept that they're going, even though something is really good, you can either accept that they made what they made and they're never going to make again, or they're going to have to try and maybe fail. But, if they don't try, they're never going to succeed. Right? Yeah. So if you ever want more Star Trek, they're going to have to keep trying to make Star Trek even if they fail.
And
go ahead.
Allow me to just interject real quick before Jeff goes off on his thing. To be fair to New Trek, while we're comparing it to Indiana Jones, at least New Trek, for better or worse, handed the torch. I mean,
yes. What I'm saying is,
I did not go see the, what's it called, the Dial of Destiny or whatever.
Yeah, I saw it.
So they keep saying they're going to pass the torch on Indiana Jones, and then they never do.
So, and what I'm meaning is obviously. And even in their failure in this one, but, I still think it was okay, but you guys obviously feel that it is a failure. I would say that they did a better job than, Paramount did a better job with these movies than Lucasfilm did with the newer Indiana Jones movies. So
I kind of disagree. I think they both are about... I honestly think the Indiana Jones films are probably a little better, even though they are also problematic and not as good. Dial of Destiny was a real bad movie, but
I've not seen that one, so I cannot.
Yeah, it wasn't as awful as this, though, in my opinion. This one really lacked. And speaking directly to your question, Gary, you're right. People have to try. You can't just say be perfect or else. They have to attempt and learn from their mistakes. My problem, though, is that I don't believe that they will learn from their mistakes. I don't believe they'll even identify their mistakes. And I think the people in charge of it now, they're obviously people who are entertainment experts, but they don't quite understand what this is. And I think that the cerebral storylines that used to be more common in the 80s and the 90s, those are not as prevalent anymore. There used to be a lot more entertainment that was designed around educating people. And Star Trek is entertainment, but it also attempts to be educational. It's like, so it does attempt. And there are people who grew up watching Star Trek and they saw a team working together. They saw Spock and McCoy arguing over philosophy. They also saw scientific theories being displayed in a story. So, showing all that together can, in fact, inspire people to be more interested in science. And I don't think this accomplishes that. Turning it into another action, a popcorn movie, just makes it normal. We took something that was unique and we had to make it normal. And I think that's very common for human beings to think about that towards anything. Anything unique must be changed to become normal. It's a tendency. And there's not enough people in Hollywood that like Roddenberry, who want to just do things differently. And I don't defend Roddenberry as this super genius. I just think it's special that at least he thought differently than other people, which is what took this show and steered it in a different direction. And it turns out sometimes where you do things very differently, you might come up with a flop. But if you do things differently once in a while, you might strike gold. You might do something really great. And I think that's what Star Trek did. It went for something that upset all the writers, that upset the producers. It was science fiction, which was upsetting of itself because they wanted to make cowboy movies. And they certainly didn't want to make a utopia story. That was just upsetting to a lot of people. But they kept with it, and it hit some sort of trigger for the audience. And they got a niche audience that propelled it to just this huge status. And now they don't believe in any of those things that made it, that originally created that trigger for the audience. And I don't think people really understand it. But I think if you mix the right amount, not too much, but you mix the right amount of philosophy into a story, and then you put colorful things in the story, a little humor, a little action, a little romance, like a structured story. If you do all that, you come up with something big. And that's actually what I think made Star Wars better, is that you did have a little bit of philosophy mixed in to the cool space battles and the dramatic moments where Luke meets the Emperor. And there's philosophy in the background mixed with lightsaber action in the foreground. I think there's a mix there that I don't think that people are understanding. You've got to have those put together. I don't claim, I'm not a writer myself, so I don't claim to know all these things, but I think that's what my sense is. And I think they could have done that if they would have, they could have done a few things to this storyline to make it better. Like if the main bad guy, Idris Elba, I forget his character name, but if he became bad, they need a reason why he became bad. Was it the technology that changed him? They had this alien technology, which they need to explain what it was or where it came from. Or if there's no explanation, they need to say there's no explanation. Then they need to show how his evilness comes about. Or something about his character. Maybe he had a character flaw that became exaggerated because of the alien technology, because he's very protective. And now he wants to destroy humanity because he's protective of humanity in the sense that he hates that they now want to be peaceful. That was kind of the whole... Anyway, I'm going too many... You guys can interrupt me because I'm on my monologue thing again. But so anyway, that's what I think.
Okay, so I'm sure Gary was going to say something, but I'm just going to interject real quick in my self-appointed role of the remover of rose-tinted glasses. Let's not pretend that everything in the 80s was deep and philosophical. There is some real dumb action movies that came out of the 80s, dude.
There's some really... Yes, and there's also some really amazingly well-written action movies that have...
Yeah, but let's not pretend
that Star Wars, Star Trek, you've got the Terminator movies, you've got...
You got Commando, you got...
Actually, BJ, there's
I'm not saying Predator. You're not right. I mean, you're right, BJ. You're right.
Let's not pretend that Predator is deep and philosophical.
I think there is some deep philosophical stuff to Predator.
BJ, there's an entire, I think it's called Canon. It's a movie production, Canon Movies. They made movies by the, basically just cranked those suckers out, right? Their entire philosophy was, we're just going to keep making money by making movies en masse. Whatever script comes across our desk, we'll make it. But they're never going to put a lot of resources into it because, you'll bankrupt yourself if you put a lot of resources into it. So you got a whole bunch of really cheap movies made. So that's probably the movies you're thinking of, BJ. They're just 80s schlocky.
There were, what's it called? What's that studio called that makes ripoff of? I don't know if they even still exist, but for a while they made thinly veiled, very closely tiled ripoffs of very major blockbuster. Was it The Asylum?
Something like that. There's a whole, the concept exists, always exists, always will exist of B movies, where there's just like kind of schlocky movies. These days they don't make it into theaters because it's too expensive to distribute to theaters versus just straight to streaming, which is as cheap as they can do, and try to make...
Back in the day, they used to go directly to home video. New to home video.
or TV distribution, local cable distribution, and then maybe make it to a network or home video or something like that.
I think, and this is me, I'll try not to rant. I will try. But I think that the audience today they feel a little empty from Hollywood. And I think the reason is because their attention span has caused them to not focus on certain fundamental things that make entertainment more high quality. Instead, like in this movie, they just want the Beastie Boys playing while they're blowing up spaceships for a reason that doesn't matter. Like, okay, if you want that stuff, you can have it. You can make lots of stuff like that. But there should be some entertainment somewhere that pushes the boundary of some sort of deeper meaning.
And to be fair, you're kind of railing on the modern audience here. This movie did the flop. This movie
That's true.
was a financial failure, which is probably why there hasn't been a fourth new Trek movie in nearly 10 years.
And it's sad because I think there should be. The TV shows don't seem to be working. Nobody seems to know what to do with Star Trek. And they struggled with Star Wars, too. The Mandalorian, I think, is an example that Star Wars can be done, but you got to do it the right way. And there are directors who know how to do Star Wars. But there's other directors who struggle with it. You can't just take anybody and expect them to do high quality stuff like this. Star Trek and Star Wars, they're deceptively simple, but in reality, they're very complicated to make a good story. Much more complicated.
Oh, and I think we are starting to see a bit of a correction. Like in the past few years, it seems like almost every, or I shouldn't say every, but a number of movies that on paper should have been slam dunks crashed and burned. Like the aforementioned Indiana Jones. Was there
Dial Destiny?
Yeah, Sundial Destiny or whatever. Like I said, I didn't
Dial
see
of
it.
Destiny.
Dial of Destiny. Like a lot of Marvel movies have crashed and burned because they strayed from their formula. So
they started off strong too. It seems like they were very popular, and then they fizzled off.
Yeah. Go ahead, Gary.
But having said that, there are movies out there, especially in the modern day, that are doing well. I don't know if I suggested one, and then I veered away from it for a minute. Maybe we'll review it someday, but there was a movie that came out, it was called Nobody. You guys haven't seen it yet. Let's just say that I think very highly of this movie. And seeing as how well it did in the theaters, I think that many other people thought well of it as well. So, just to show that, it's not a thing about old versus new.
Oh, yeah.
It's a thing of good movies versus bad. People even in the modern day understand how to make good movies. They just have to.
And like another example is a movie that I know we have all seen, and to this point is the last movie I saw in the theater, and I assume it was the last movie Jeff saw in the theater, Godzilla -1. That was for being a subtitled foreign movie, that was a runaway success in the US, right?
Yep.
If you build it, they will come.
If you make a good movie, people will watch it. Word of mouth will get out and people will watch. And if you make a turd, no one's going to watch it. Maybe you'll get a few people based off of special effects or whatever. But, not a huge audience. But
yeah, it seems like it is getting to the point where spectacle alone is no longer going to put butts in seats.
Yeah,
you
need
I'm not
good
against
writing.
I'm not against spectacle. I just think that if you don't have good writing anywhere, then that's a problem. And I think it's a disappointment to at least a lot of the people watching this because they're expecting depth and it just never comes because that's not what is the intent is now. The intent is to compete with comic book movies. That's basically what this is. It's you're taking Star Trek, treating it as a comic book, making it into an action flick just to compete with Marvel and other things.
There was a part towards the end where there was some weird gravity hijinks that I had to stop and got my phone like, did this come out before or after Doctor Strange? It came out the same year, so.
Yeah, weird.
You know what other movie that came to mind while I was watching this? Galaxy Quest.
Yeah.
Because why is it that every single one of these super important mechanisms require you to go down and flip these gigantic switches? The saucer second. Need to separate the saucer second? Nope, have to go flick this switch. Why does the primary air filter of this gigantic starbase, you can't shut it down automatically, but you can open a hatch into space in your primary life support system. You can't shut it down, but you can vent your entire atmosphere. That makes sense.
Why is there a giant smashy hammery room in the middle of the ship?
Well, if you had something that was really that much of a weakness, why didn't you post like some security guards or something? Like, I could understand of having like a manual override, perhaps. Like your computer goes down, then you hunt something that can override the computer. I can get that. But then if it's there, you should protect it somehow.
I mean, that was kind of another problem I had in the movie, now that I think about it, is that the Federation had to be pretty incompetent for the plot to continue. And like does the Federation not have information security? This guy can get like a Explorer probe and use it to hack the most advanced space station in the Federation.
Apparently he had alien technology that was never described.
Okay, yeah.
That was never talked about or described or shown or anything.
Oh yeah, I didn't think about that you could hand wave the hacking away with, oh yeah, the ancient alien technology.
That changed him? Why it changed him? Why would the technology change him into an alien and make their language change? Why? I don't know. I don't know. Only fools think about these kinds of things. They just watch the scenes with Beastie Boys in them. Watch things explode. That's all that matters.
You were very unhappy with that part, weren't you?
Well, back to it. I know. It's not that I'm so conflicted because I really think artistically it really is cool looking. It just doesn't belong under such a bad premise. It belongs in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie. That would be the tone that I think this movie is supposed to have. The Guardians of the Galaxy is like whimsical. It's fun. There's a raccoon. They have like lines that are just sarcastic, and they have Groot with it's a character that people like, and then they have 80s music to go on the top of their action scenes. See, that's fun and comic book like. I get that. This movie was kind of trying to be that.
Oh, okay, Jeff.
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So, presuming then, I'm just wondering if this is right, if this is the right assessment of your opinion then. If this movie had been generic science fiction movie in space with maybe 10% better of writers, right? Just 10%, fix a few of those basic plot holes, you might have given it a score of I don't know, 0 or 1. Is that my assessment of it?
Sure.
Okay.
Probably. I mean, it depends, because if it violates major Star Trek stuff, which a lot of the new stuff does. I know, I'm a nerd. I admit it. I'm a nerd. I get it. But if it violates the Prime Directive...
What Gary is going for is that if it was
not Star Trek.
If it was basically the same movie but didn't have Star Trek in the title.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't understand that. Okay.
Yeah, no. So if this is not Star Trek, like
if it was not Star Trek,
let's make this a new series. Let's say this is I don't know, I'm looking okay. The Conquerors the Conquerors series. This is the Conquerors. I'm looking at titles that I'm seeing on my bookshelf. Conqueror's Heritage or Conqueror's Pride. You have no idea what book that is, but it's an awesome book. You should read it sometime. But regardless, Jeff, let's say this movie was titled Conqueror's Pride, was not Star Trek at all, right?
I'd probably
nothing
even
to do
give
with
it,
Star Trek.
I'd probably give it a 2. I probably would, just because I think that some of the blowing up stuff is fine. I would give it a 2.
Yeah, it's slightly different looking ships.
As long as it wasn't made for like an older audience, as long as this is really an 8 to 10, 12-year-old audience that this is designed for, then I would definitely give it a 2. You don't need sophisticated villains for that kind of stuff. There was a few plot things that I wish they would have just, maybe even a few lines of explanation could have helped make it not so undescribed, but
so 10%
I'd probably
better
give it
writer.
good.
The 10% better writer, generic science fiction movie would probably do better. But because it's violating Star Trek, this is getting a bad score. And I'm fully on board with this argument, Jeff. The argument that you're making that it deserves its bad score, though I don't agree with it. I understand your argument of why it should get a bad score for that, but
it is an alternate universe, so it's attached to the canon. Even if it is an alternate universe, there is a connection.
It still kind of taints the brand because it is what it is, being associated with that brand.
And there's millions of people that will be watching it just because of the brand. And so with the relation to the audience, I think it should have somehow fit better to the expectations of those audience members. If you want a new show for a new audience, then make the movie like you described. Like, it's great. Make an action movie, and Abrams knows more about that kind of stuff than he does this. Sorry, I said the name. I did. But, yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Yep, I could complain to the end of time, but I think you guys get it. You get it.
And I think you get now why I'm kind of because I'm not super invested in the Star Trek, so I can't be as critical of a judge of it.
Yeah.
So that's why
to be honest,
it a
like
0.5. So
Star Trek is so tacky. Like, honestly, the special effects do not hold up well compared to Star Wars special effects or other big things. To me, like, and plus,
well, like, are you talking about like you're talking about like the original TV series?
Yeah. Some of the movies do really well, but
the original
some
TV
of it's
series
low budget.
Was that 60s?
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly.
The point is, the thing is Star Trek is not something that the average person would love because they see it and they get put off immediately. They see the costumes, they see the characters, they see Kirk as this cowboy. They don't really get to know the depth of Kirk, how he's devoted to his crew, how he's really a scientist and explorer, how he braces with death and difficulty in his career, and how he goes down one path in life and he realizes all he wants to do is to be out there in the stars with his crew. He doesn't want a prestigious career. There's a lot of things in depth to it. But when you see it on the surface, you're like, oh, they're in their pajamas and they're sitting in a conference room talking about how the Kardashians are being mean to these people again and blah, 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 space politics. And, oh, there's a planet and the people there are different. Who cares? And where's the space battle? And so I get it how people don't like Star Trek. They're free to like and dislike what they will. But I do want to communicate how I view the show, which is that it is a show that makes you think. If it can make you think, Gene Roddenberry has succeeded in his goal. And it just comes down to that. And if that is no longer the goal, then I think that is what I have a problem with. And that is all. I've spoken it. I will make my peace. I can now retire to the east wind. I can now retire to the west. Is that what they say in Lord of the Rings? Like,
oh, okay.
I think it's Gladriel says that. Like, I can now go to the west. I've resisted the ring.
I didn't get that reference, so sorry.
I have no idea what you're
right
talking about. I have no idea what you're talking about. But,
okay. The point is, yeah, that's what I think.
So, is it too early for me to say in conclusion?
Yeah, it's been almost an hour.
So, yeah, I was okay with it, and I can understand why you guys didn't like it, and yeah, that's about it.
I mean, like I said, I don't know how successful I was. I tried to grade it on its own merits, and still, like, even as an action film, there's other action films I like more that I would more likely go back to. So it was, and I will be totally honest, it was a bit tainted by it being Star Trek, so I had some expectations, though I guess to be fair, as is previously mentioned, I'm not as big as Trekkie as Jeff is. Like, I have never been that deep into the original TV series. I was a Next Generation guy, so maybe that's why I'm not quite as what's the word?
Fanatic?
Not quite as enthusiastic. I can't think of the right word. Not quite as discriminatory against this movie, or it being the OG crew, because I am not as attached to the OG crew, I guess, as Jeff is. I know them mostly from the original Trek movies, I guess.
Yeah, I think both crews are good. TNG did a really good job with exploring every character in depth. And the original crew, they explore Spock's character and Kirk's character a little bit. They don't go in depth into the other characters as much. They don't ever spend time on their backstories. Maybe with McCoy, there's like a little bit, but not.
So here's the real question, Jeff.
Yeah, what is the real question, BJ?
Why do you keep choosing bad Trek to inflict on us?
I think it's your influence, BJ, because you said that we were loving old stuff and ignoring the new.
No, I said that after. Okay, now, to be fair, we have very different opinions on Star Trek Motion Picture. I don't really like it. You said it was the best movie ever. Then
it's not the most entertaining movie ever.
Then
that has no humor in it.
Then you chose an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation that even you admitted was maybe not the best episode. So
you're right. You're absolutely right. I'm picking like the worst Star Trek to talk about out of all of it.
That's good. You keep choosing poorly.
Yeah, like, why don't you choose Wrath of Khan sometime?
I did. We'll be doing that later if the schedule allows it.
Like the only example I can think of is like back when we first started this, we said, oh yeah, there's going to be so much Star Trek and Godzilla. We've only reviewed like 3 Godzilla movies, but I've chosen all good Godzilla movies. You've chosen, with maybe some argument about Star Trek Motion Picture, all bad Trek.
Okay, well, there are reasons. There are reasons. No, and you're okay. I'm trying to
keep undercutting this thing I love.
All right, fine.
By showing the worst
I've gotten all the bad
portions
Trek off my chest. It's from now on, BJ. It's only good Trek. Only good Trek.
I'm just saying.
Subject to debate.
If people came into this podcast cold, again with some debate around Star Trek motion picture, because we have made our own opinions on that exceptionally clear. I guess maybe we might have...
I wanted to do Wrath of Khan this time around, but then
Why did you change it?
Yeah, because I'm insane. That's why. Because I thought, well, nobody's seen it, and at least we'll go through this new stuff and we'll explain it. And yeah, what a miserable experience. We could have been watching Wrath of Khan, one of the great classics. Even people who hate Trek usually like Wrath of Khan.
No.
And quote it even.
No, I'm just waiting for Jeff to right before we watch, he's gonna change it to like the Search for Spock or
I am tempted because the Search for Spock is one of my favorites.
Or is that the sixth?
The Final Frontier.
Final Frontier? Was God a starship?
That's a good one too. Final Frontier. But
we have proven your opinions of good are somewhat suspect when it comes to Trek.
Yeah, I would much prefer number 6 over number 5, but that's a personal opinion.
Jeff is the only person on the face of the earth who likes the odd number Trek movies more than the evens.
I thought it was a given that all the even number Trek movies were like really good, and all the odd number ones were the skip these, please.
Jeff is the outlier.
I'm in an alternate universe, basically. In my own alternate universe. Well, the even ones are good. I like all of them. In fact, the best Star Trek ever made, I think, is the original movies, like movies 1 through 6. The TNG movies are fun, but they're not as good as those.
Well, like
those, I think, are the real height of it all.
I think you said your favorite TNG one is Nemesis? No, not Nemesis. But
I like Nemesis, but Hollow Pursuits is probably my favorite.
What?
Because, there's an episode called Hollow Pursuits. It's about Barclay.
I was talking about
who gets addicted to the holodeck. And I should have brought this up in an early discussion, because Gary made this great point a long time ago about how people would just be addicted to holodecks. And there's actually an episode about that where someone gets addicted to a holodeck and they have to somehow help him with his addiction. And
I was talking about the movies now. Jeff's starting to pull episodes. I think I know what episode you're talking about even, but I was talking...
You were talking about... Nemesis.
What's the third new Trek movie? It's not Nemesis, because Nemesis is the weird fourth one. What's it called?
The new Trek movie coming out soon?
No. The third Next Generation movie, the one in...
That would be Nemesis. There's Generations, First Contact, starts with an I.
Insurrection. That's what I was talking about.
Yeah. You don't like that one, right?
I thought you said that was your favorite one, because Nemesis is the weird...
Yeah, Nemesis was
the
great.
weird one, but...
Yeah, I didn't like Nemesis as much, but I liked Insurrection a lot. I probably liked it more than First Contact, which makes me an outlier because everybody loves First Contact.
I was going to say,
I get that.
I'm kind of the mainstream opinion on that. First Contact is the best TNG movie.
Yeah, First Contact is good, but I don't like how they made a Borg Queen. But at the same time, I think the Borg Queen really helps the story. So I just think that maybe the Borg Queen shouldn't have been the Borg Queen. It should have been more like a Locutus, where it's like, here's a spokesperson, not here's the Borg leader. It's here's the spokesperson.
Yeah, it was kind of weird to give the Borg a load-bearing boss.
Yeah. That's completely not Borg. I mean, the Borg don't have a leader. The Borg are all Borg. We are Borg. That's not their thing. I mean, that's like putting Christmas decorations up in Halloween. It just doesn't work. The wrong kind of thing.
Remember like 5 minutes ago when Gary was trying to get us to stop?
Yes, I was.
And he failed. He failed to stop us. Okay, I'm ready to stop. We can stop this madness.
Stop it now. I can't think of a good stop it quote. My movie quotes fail me. Jeff snuck no one past me, now my powers have failed. Okay. Dare I say,
silence and lack of comebacks proves that we're running out of steam.
So yes, any final thoughts? I think we have bypassed final thoughts the last few episodes at Gary's behest, but I'm bringing it back. Okay, no final thoughts, I guess. So, yeah, that was our third Star Trek episode. Star Trek-based episode.
And, yep. And they're all controversial episodes. All 3 Star Trek ones.
Well, like I said, there is some argument about Star Trek motion picture, but I think we all generally agree that the other 2 you picked were weaker, except for Gary kind of on Beyond, but not really. He only gave it a 0.5.
I promise, no more below average Trek. No more. I will only do good Trek.
If you keep choosing
forevermore,
if you keep choosing bad Trek, I'm going to retaliate and start picking some bad Godzilla movies, because there's some bad Godzilla movies, dude. Holy cow.
Dude, I actually would probably prefer the bad ones, but okay.
You say that. Well, then again, I'm not going there. Gary wants to stop.
Okay.
Stop.
Okay. All right. Anyway. I have no more final thoughts.
Okay, Gary.
No more final thoughts.
I just have no more thoughts whatsoever. Oh yeah. Hope everyone enjoyed. Trying to think. Happy Thanksgiving? Is this our Thanksgiving-ish episode?
Sounds about right.
We can be thankful we don't have to watch this ever again.
Actually, wait. Before we stop, I need to look at something real quick.
Something very important.
Yes. So
we were almost free, Jeff. Almost free.
So
it's got to be some sort of point that he has to make.
Well, no, I was just curious, so I had to go review our scores. So, okay, so I guess I'm going to drag this out just a little bit longer with one final question. Jeff, if you had your choice between watching Star Trek Beyond and Cabaret, movies you have given equal scores to, which would you rather watch again?
Oh my goodness, this is a hypothetical question that is difficult to answer. Oh no.
I think for me,
don't
Gary,
want to watch
it's safe
Cabaret
to say Star
so
Trek
bad.
Beyond
I don't
every
want to watch
single
that
time,
so bad.
And twice on Sunday.
It's no choice. It's real easy for me to say this, but then again, I didn't give them equal scores. Now, did I?
Oh, BJ, I can't watch either of them again. It's too much for me. Choose. You must choose. Okay, I guess I'd watch Star Trek again. I guess so. I don't know. Cabaret has some things in it that I actually thought I had a lot of interesting thoughts about Cabaret. That at least interested me, at least. I don't know if it interested anyone else.
Oh, gosh.
It's like, but anyway.
That's
okay, I answered your question. Okay. I guess Cabaret is awful enough I would refuse to watch it again. There's just a few songs that it's too much for me. If it wasn't for those songs, I could probably get through it again. And skip Star Trek Beyond.
Okay, I just thought about it last second, so I had to say it. So yeah, thanks for joining us, everybody. Be thankful you don't have to hear our opinions on these movies ever again, I guess. I'm BJ. With me was Jeff and Gary. We will see you next time for whatever it is we talk about. Bye.